Brought to you by Telehelping, a virtual assistant staffing company for professionals.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Hall, and I am the host of The Faces, Entrepreneurs Are People Too, and the founding CEO of Telehelping, a virtual staffing company, and the herein sponsor of my podcast. So I appreciate you, Telehelping, for allowing me the opportunity to talk to great people like Todd. Todd, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm in anticipation of a nice long 3-day weekend. So I'm in a good spot, even though I'm really slammed pretty much up until July 3rd, as everyone wants to get everything done now. But I can't complain because I always I thrive on activity. So
It's funny you say that because the third is I rotate through trying to, on the different account managers for my clients, at least once a month, meeting with the virtual assistants and the account manager on their biweekly check-ins. And it just so happened that day is right before the fourth. And man, from like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., I have a meeting every like 30
yeah.
minutes, the entire day. And I always say, I'm like, man, you guys do this every other week. They're like, well, sometimes twice a week. I'm like, all right, man, you guys work harder than I thought you are. But that's neither here nor there. Before we rabbit hole, as I've warned you, sometimes we shall do. Todd, please take an opportunity to tell the listeners here today who are we chatting with? Who's Todd?
Yeah, cool. So, Todd Weiss, live here in Port Washington in New York, Long Island. I'll call myself a recovering Wall Street guy. I spent the first part of my career in commercial real estate finance, wanting to become the next Wall Street financier or whatever you want to call it. But then pivoted in 2008, 2009 into the world of franchising and helping people become business owners and navigating that. That's the day job. That's what I like to do. On the side, on the personal side, I would characterize myself as very religious in terms of fitness, wellness, mental well-being, a lot of Zen stuff. So that's actually probably the most interesting aspect of what I do and how I leverage that in what I do. But love my family, love being with people, love communicating, and love having my own business and helping people become business owners.
I think that's hilarious that you say that, Todd, because the first thing I thought is, man, I also at one point had aspirations of being the next Warren Buffett. And then I said, the hell with that. Once I realized what went into it, right? Like, oof, what a journey. But I'm really interested about this fitness thing. So you're a holistic mind body kind of guy, or are you more of like a yoga retreat guy? Talk to me. What are you?
So it, the journey in fitness, I played a little bit of college sports. My dad was my inspiration in terms of always being in shape. So I remember, or at least working out, and being physically active. So I remember, growing up little, he had like that first weight set from Sears, came from a military background, and I just took interest into it as a lot of folks do. And then you go to college, you get older, and you forget about that stuff as you get prohibitively lazy. Got married, had a family, child was born. You're up at 5 a.m. And I said, I got to do something. And then I got right back into fitness. And I think the aspect that I've really learned is one, it's not really what you do, it's actually just doing something really to escape from or have a release from your work job and finding that balance. But on a fitness side, I always adjust and adapt. Right now, I'm doing more of the hardcore weight training, but I also really emphasize everyday mobility, flexibility. So I don't go to yoga classes, but I do a lot of the moves, and I also practice meditation every single day. That's probably more important. It's the thing we don't want to do. But I think in terms of resetting up here in your head, it's probably the most important thing I've ever done. I started practicing that maybe about 6 years ago.
I I I appreciate the approach, the holistic health, and I've had people who've messaged us and comment. They always want to know if I'm doing product placement here. I've actually reached out to a couple of these drink companies. They should sponsor my podcast. Muscle Milk. I drink you 3 times a day. I'd love not to pay for this. Um, and so, but I am a huge person on, I mean, I take vitamins 3 or 4 times a day. One thing I try to focus on that's important to my fitness is twofold, is the brain, right? I try to protect my mornings where I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about myself, I'm thinking about my approach for the day, and I'm thinking about, how yesterday went. And then I also, completely opposite direction of this, is when I do exercise, I like working out some of the muscles that we don't use a lot of. So a lot of balance based muscles, because, and I give my wife so much crap for this all the time, is if you can't balance on one foot, like your ability to balance on one foot and look up is directly correlated to, your length of life expectancy. And so, I oftentimes love working on things like balance, things like stability, things like twitch muscles, just because they prevent injury. And so someone who's tweaked knees, knee surgeries and 2 shoulder replacements, like I have to protect these joints of mine. And so I try really heavily in those because I like bending down and tying my own shoe. I like getting up off the floor, right? I like picking up my toddler who looks like a linebacker, even though he's 3 years old, right? And so those are things that I'm trying to protect.
Yeah, and when you think about the functional aspect of training and why it's important, and I have friends reach out to me all the time. Usually, if you've got pain or something in one area, it's really something else. But from a practical standpoint, you have a toddler that's going the other direction, and you have to pick them up. That's a deadlift, and it's actually harder because they're pulling against you. It's not just the weight. If your body is out of whack, and you get into your 30s, 40s, um, dude, you'll pull something, and then it's like, gosh, I'm out of pocket for 6 weeks. And if you're a business owner, that adds a whole other level of complexity. That happened to me a couple of years ago. It was like I was on calls, literally like keeled over on my desk because I had strained my back fighting through the pain. And I'm like, God, I actually have to do the mobility stuff just to do my
Yeah.
job in front of a screen. But one of my people I go to he's a massage therapist, and it's not fun. Like, it hurts. But he always rips into me like, you're leaning forward too much into the screen. So, and
Yeah.
like, and so like, wow, but it's posture and it's everything. So, as weird as all of this sounds, like, that stuff, your wellness matters in your day job and in your relationships. And if you don't have that right, whether you're in sales or whatever it is you do, you can't deliver to your clients. That's part. It's almost like
Well said.
just like your work preparation in a sense.
No, well said. And that's the biggest thing is, you said it. Like I did that. I picked up my son a couple weeks back, and I picked it up in a way because he was not in my center of gravity, right? I was picking him up outside of where you would normally deadlift, 60 pounds, right? And so pulling away, it tweaked my back. I mean, there was a couple of days there where I was icy hot in it every day because I was like, man, this little booger. But
Yeah.
one thing you said that I thought was really important and sage, and this is, you're gonna figure out how quick I shift gears here, is uh, oftentimes where the pain is isn't the problem, right? You said that my brain went to business. It went to business and finances, and so you talked about it, and health and well-being helps you in an organization. At this point, this is where my analogy is going. Is it helps you prevent strains and pains. So let's talk about that element there, because I know you're in the finance game.
So where do you want me to go specifically with that? I could take that a lot of different directions.
You can
Um,
drive the ship wherever you want to drive the ship. So it's
well,
just as
think,
much.
think about it. Think about it this way. Up and if you know, I one of the challenges that I have, and I think every entrepreneur has, is if you're busy during the day, and busy activity is good, meaning like you've got appointments with clients and your team, and you're running your business, you're generating revenue. But if you get to the point where um, you're busy almost for the sake of being busy and not being proactive and getting in depth into those specific calls, problems, questions. You're almost like rushing through the process just to check off a list. You'll quickly discover in business the results of your company will fall, and you're out of the flow, if that makes sense. So you could be talking to a customer and you're almost like, I've got a check-in call with them for whatever reason, or they've got a problem, and you're listening to them actively, or you think you are, but your thought is someplace else, and they feel that, and it hurts you. I don't know if that's kind of what you're thinking, but that's one thing I notice for
Yeah.
me in my day job. And what I do is, if I have this in a place where it's laser focused on that, and look, all the other distractions that you're getting, you will get to them, but you can't be like, oh, squirrel, and you get that distraction. Because what happens is, if you spread yourself too thin and don't have that flow, you're really doing two jobs poorly versus one job well.
Yeah. And that's well said, because you're putting energy and effort into what you're doing, but you're not putting the intent in what you're doing. And I think that, and you said, well, like, you can go to your client check-in calls, you can meet with your team. And I say this to, I literally just said this exact same thing to one of my team members. And I was saying, hey, listen, I feel like you're doing things to do them versus doing things to be good and successful at them, right? We have a lot to do, undoubtedly, all the time. However, when you get to the point where you're just trying to get it all done to get it done, you will fail. And then that's where you're like, oh, well, there's a problem over here, but that possibly isn't the sufferer. That the issue, the pain point you're having over here could be caused by the lack of intention that's being put into the general effort. And I think that comes down to just spreading yourself too thin. We see it with our clients all the time.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, we want capacity, right? You want more customers, you want more activity. But if you have too much of it and you're just kind of rushing through it, you're not really. I just noticed, for me, if I get myself where I have I have to almost take active breaks within the day, and your brain says not to do that. Right. It's one of the reasons I think meditation, and we talked about wellness tying it in. Your brain's really not wired to do that. But if you take that time away and just kind of reset yourself, then your subsequent meetings with clients, customers, or even if it's not dealing with customers, just task oriented stuff, will work out and flow better. Like, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but you've got a problem, and there's different types of problems we have in business and in life. You come to the solution when you're not working actively on the problem. It just pops in your head when you've stepped away.
Yeah.
That's because you've
Yeah.
given your brain and your body time to get out of something and just think about it. And then when that happens, like, you're like, why was I so stressed about this? Why was I so bothered or distracted by it? It's really quite simple if I just stepped away from it. I
Yeah.
do a lot of these, in my day job, in dealing with customers and clients who are investigating businesses. Most of the time, it's just kind of segmenting fear and how they're processing information and what they're hearing.
I mean, the one thing I practice is 45-minute meetings. People like to throw hour-long meetings on calendars. I prefer 45-minute meetings because it gives me an opportunity, and I do 45-minute meetings with a 15-minute buffer, right? So that way someone can't just drop another 45-minute meeting right behind my 45-minute meeting. This is actually the only hour-long meeting I have every day. Well, Tuesday through Friday is my podcast. It rarely ever goes the whole hour, and technical difficulties would cause it for an hour. But no, you said something very well there. Is you need to sometimes allow your brain time to process. It's like rendering a photo, right? You're putting all your stuffing information inside of it. You have to step away every now and then, because if you jump on a calendar at 7 a.m. in the morning, you're just running through it all day. Your brain is still thinking about what it had to do this morning, right? It's still thinking and processing entirely what you were doing earlier, and you're 4 meetings down the road. And so I think from that perspective, it's important to like understand as well that, you know, we are machines, right? And we're biological machines in our own mind. And that means we need to give it time to actually function, right? And do its processes. So that's well
And you
said.
say 45-minute meeting that you bring up, that actually scares me to death. Part of it is my ADHD. But you do have the buffer, and you probably leave. I think you mentioned you leave a buffer within that call, you know, because that's a long time. But also too, like you're not, you're going there, you're meeting with your team, and you probably have 15 things you want to deal with, but you're only going to deal with one, maybe two. But
Yeah.
deal with that one, address that, and then you've got 14. If you deal with everything, you still have 15, right? And so it's like that's why, I think like, you giving yourself that buffer within that range in meetings, because I was always, we always used to do these sales meetings back in Wall Street, and it was like, the sales manager, who I love to death and still talk to him to this day, he would be like there just to figure out like how much business was happening. And he'd be like, what's the probability of that? And I would say 50%. And then the next week I'd say 50%. And he'd say, oh, it's the same thing. He said, 50% last week. I'm like, okay, Chris, 51%. I really don't know. I think it's, I don't know yet. That's what I'm basically telling you. I think we have a shot,
50-50.
but we're spending time here talking about this so you can feel better. And that's great. But like, I'd be better served being on the phone talking to my next person to get 50%. Right. But there I digress, being the sales driven guy that I am, in terms of wanting to, you know, I guess, dealing with the meetings and stuff and getting tasks done.
Well, that's one thing I tell my team all the time. It just happened as of yesterday. Just because my calendar doesn't say it has a meeting doesn't mean I'm not busy, right? It just dropped a meeting on my calendar after, and I was like, well, like sure, right? Yes, you could place a meeting there. Absolutely. We're going to do this whole meeting. However, understand that I'm in the process of doing things that are going to now be delayed because now I have to stop for a meeting. And so, well, like, generally I don't take same day meetings unless they're with current clients, just because and we're current clients, right? And there's something that's urgent, I'm always available. However, to get to me, it had to go through an account manager. So if they want to talk to me that day, it's a problem that needs Cody, right? If otherwise, my schedule when I wake up in the morning is my schedule for the day, right? So I'm like, oh, great. Between, 9 and 10 a.m., I'm going to get this meeting. I'm going to get these things done. And you never get it all done. But that's why I think the 45-minute meeting with the buffer is perfect, because you're sitting there like, okay, I got 45 minutes of talking, right? Let's be concise, let's get to the point, let's not ramble, right? And then 15 minutes of let me get a couple of these little small things done before my next meeting. And so, but
It's funny.
I am pretty adamant.
It's funny when you bring up, like, just because I don't have a meeting doesn't mean I'm not working. And or have something that you're working on, whatever that is. But the running joke is I work from home, and I've worked from home for 16 years, and it's a major adjustment. But it took me about 2 years to really figure out, okay, I'm turning it on, I'm turning it off, right? If someone needs to get a hold of me, they can, but for the most part, I can shut down at 7. But one of the things I notice, when I'm here, sometimes my family, and they've learned this, like, I'm working, I'm not here. I'm not dad right now, right? I'm Todd.
Yeah.
And then and so that's one thing that I think entrepreneurs struggle with. But also, I might just on a normal day go walk into a room, and then you probably have this where someone on your team's like, oh, great, you're here. And they pounce with something that's a problem. And it totally, totally, like, I get it. It's very important to them, and it's also important to you. But the rule we have in our house is no pouncing. Like, We got a 5-minute buffer to let me come into the room, like
No
just
doubt.
breathe, and then come to me. And of course, then my wife's like, "What do I have to schedule time with you?" And I'm like, "Well,
During the workday, right?
yeah,
I
but
and
but even if
er,
you just if you think about it, Cody, just in human nature, like just don't pounce on somebody. We all do it. I do it, but that's the funny thing I find about that is like, oh, I'm in the middle. I might not be working on something, but I'm thinking about something and processing things, and that's what I have my space for.
yeah, no, when I walk into a room generally during the workday, everyone's just looking at me to see if I have headphones on. Because sometimes I walk out of my office to
Yeah,
go to a refrigerator. Maybe I want a beverage or something, or I want a snack, and I could be on the phone, very much still working. And I said, just look for the white things, right? If I'm talking, like if I walk, as I say, if I walk into a room talking, I'm not talking to you, right?
yeah. I think
And
you got to go
so
with a set of head to make it
I think
more.
so. I I think that's a necessity. My mom lives in a casita here in Mexico, is out back, and she does not see the headphones. And so she'll think I'm talking to her. And so I think I knew, I have some bows over the years I'm gonna start wearing when I'm out the office. That way I can really but no, I do like the pounce rule. They don't pounce on me. They're just all staring at me to see if I'm talking to them at first. They're like trying to assess whether or
Yeah.
not if I'm
Yeah, so if they're
approachable at that point
lurking,
or not.
it's the
Yeah,
same thing. Is it still? Yeah, but look, that's the delicate balance. It's one of the reasons, though, despite the fact that we're complaining about it now.
right.
There's an important aspect that's one of your team members that's trying to accomplish a task, and I think as leaders, and your role is like, how do I manage and not micromanage? You said it before. Okay, if I've got an active client that I've been working with for a while and an issue comes up, I got to take the call. But you have to build the infrastructure within your organization for the new person to understand, like to get to Cody, it is a privilege because you have to focus on the big picture. And the way your business grows is by replicating yourself and have folks to manage that.
No, and that's well said. And I think that, oftentimes, my wife said it really well once at when we launched our first restaurant, right? And she said it in Spanish, and then she said
So
it in
crazy.
a little more vulgar way. But she generally says, if Cody's involved, something's screwed up. Like if Cody is if you are getting Cody's attention, you either are a new client or we have a problem, right? And so
Yeah.
like there's something that requires a different mindset and problem solving if I'm involved, right? And so if I'm insisting on a meeting, it's because I think something's messed up, right? And I keep a very genuine relationship with our clients because I believe in clear and concise feedback and communication, and not this whole blowing smoke up each other, right? To try to like, oh, well, you're the client, or always like, well, no, I actually fully believe my clients are wrong all the time, and it's okay because they actually pay me to be right at what I'm right about, and that they get paid to do what they get right. And that's something that I'm all the time saying. I was talking to a client just yesterday and we were going back and forth. And I was like, hey, listen, let's make no mistake here. If I'm on a client check-in, it's because we have a grave concern, right? And then in this particular concern, it was discrimination, right? And so like if we're yeah if I'm here, it's not to say hello to you. You could have emailed me, and so yeah, and I think that's a balance. And the one thing I want to hit on right before because you said it well, right? We pay people to get things done, right? And when they reach out to like I balance that all the time. Like someone comes to me like, oh, I need to get this from you, Cody, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, uh, I want to be like, leave me alone, but I also want to not discourage them from being, having the initiative and the drive to accomplish the task in a timely manner. So it's like my brain's like, leave me alone. My body's like, oh, okay, cool. Let's put this in, let's do this real quick and we'll have a conversation about this. And so we'll go forth, right? And I'll make time
Apathy
even though it aggravates me.
worse. Apathy's
Yeah.
worse. Like that. I
Yeah.
mean, and I hate to sound like I'm dating myself, but you see it generationally, and I know every generation has said this about the younger ones, but I think there is some apathy there, but I also think there's a lack of mentorship. Um, not to go off track, but which is like a lot of people work from home now, and that's a
Mhm.
great thing. But there is something to be said for being in the office and having the community and the mentorship. I mean, when I was in my early 20s back on Wall Street, not thinking I knew everything and then realizing like there was a lot of subtle, lot of things I didn't learn. I would have the opportunity to grab lunch or coffee with somebody who'd been working in the industry for 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And then that gave me kind of a higher level of appreciation and knowledge. So,
No.
um, just my two
Yeah.
cents on that topic.
No, and I think that's why we see a rapid increase in the amount of networks that are growing, like Entrepreneur Network here, Entrepreneur Network. I get invited to 30 of them a week, it seems like. Um, it's difficult to have those interactions because even if you get in those networks, they're not the same. And I've been a part of them and I've left them because I didn't find any value in them. And you're right, you know, pre-COVID is when I was in the office last, like really full time in the office. Like we have offices, but like I'm not in the office. And I've also went from executive into CEO-ship, right, since those times at various companies. And so now I don't really have the mentorship that I have, but I'm sitting there and I have to brush shoulders with guys in healthcare that will forget more about healthcare than I'll ever know, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and that just that brain melt, that the osmosis that took place, right? I guess it's more so diffusion since osmosis is just water diffusion that takes place, right? Is no
Yeah.
longer.
Science, you're getting way over my head now too.
Yeah,
But
sorry about that. Sorry. So the osmosis that took place, right?
yeah,
It's not there anymore because you just like can't sit there and lunch with somebody and be like, oh, by the way, pick up on this piece of knowledge and expertise that just slides out in conversation that you casually have with the person at lunch. So, no, well said, Todd. And I want to shift gears here for a second because we've been chatting, having a good time, but I don't think any of us really know what you do. So that's a good question.
yeah. So, no, but it's all good. Um, so think of me. I'm a franchise broker. I like to think of myself as an executive coach or an executive recruiter for aspiring entrepreneurs. So we work with people who are thinking about or have some desire to own and operate a business, but they don't know how. Like everybody in the entrepreneurial space, your world, some people want to be that, but it's like a professor giving you a your own topic to write a paper on. Some people can do that, but some people say, "Hey, write about the Civil War, or write about this person," and they do a really, really, really good job for that with that. So we work with folks that are thinking, I want to have my own thing. Sometimes it can be full time and leave a corporate career. Sometimes it's more semi-absentee when they want it more for investment, for income and asset diversification. But they come to us and they say, I want to own and operate my own business. I need some structure. I've heard about this franchise thing. We work with a number of different brands, and we basically help people research the opportunities to learn about it, see if it's suitable. Then we'll help them create criteria to target different options and industries that make sense for what they want, and then help them do their due diligence and investigate those specific models. That's my day job.
Oh, that's so you're helping people who really don't know how. I mean, which is a great topic for those listening because a lot of our folks who follow, they either want to start a business, they're interested in entrepreneurship, or they've recently launched a business. That's primarily the majority of our base is our subscribers on YouTube.
Right.
So it's interesting. So you're helping people who they have the idea, they just don't know where to plug it in.
Well, it's not we're not looking for people who have ideas that want to franchise it. We're looking for people
Okay.
that like their idea is I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to have my own
Okay.
business. Right. So it's a little bit different. Now we can help if someone has an idea.
I had it
I
opposite. I had it
yeah,
opposite. You have someone who wants to be a business owner, but doesn't know what type of business to be in. So you help them find a franchise.
correct.
Oh, that is really cool.
little bit different. Now I've worked both sides, but yeah, no. So no, we're looking for the people like, I want to have this, I can do this, but give me a script, give me a roadmap to follow. Because essentially that's what you're getting with a franchise. It's a you're granted a license to operate someone's business model. You're paying for that, right? You're paying a franchise fee, you're paying royalties. You are giving up control, but the benefit is you're getting a script and roadmap to follow. So folks
Yeah,
that are
so
like oriented that can follow a script, it can be a good option. But there's a lot of aspects to that we go through.
that's so interesting because I wanted to franchise our restaurants because I have restaurants and I wanted to
Yeah.
franchise those things. Just had no clue where to start in Mexico. I saw a bunch of franchise connections and everything for the United States, but couldn't. Our restaurants are in Mexico, so I had nowhere to start because I was like, man, I was like, we've we've learned a lot of these lessons the hard way for a lot of people. It'd be nice if someone who didn't want to go through all this pain just wanted to operate one of these without having to learn the hard way. And so,
And you case in point, because you'll have somebody that someone say, why am I paying for this? Why can't I do it yourself? And my answer is always, you absolutely can. What they what people underestimate is the pain that you went through. You're paying for opportunity cost, right? Um,
yeah,
Most businesses fail on the startup, non-franchise. I think it's because you run out of your resources and you can't pay your way through all the mistakes you're going to make. I mean, eventually you'll get it right, unless you have a horrible idea, and we definitely see a lot of those. But you'll eventually figure it out. But do you have the time, resources, and then emotional energy to kind of go through that? And so that's one of the things that people really underestimate, um, with that. I mean, I think you had mentioned in your business you help people with, in your telehealth appointments, lead generation, stuff like that,
yeah,
and that's a tremendous value. Like getting potential clients. Everyone's like, oh, I've got this idea. I'm going to offer this
yeah.
service. Great. You probably do great. What are you going to charge? How are you going to find your people? And in almost every instance, no one has that answer. And that's what a franchise model does.
No, I mean, we're in the franchising of people, right? And so in a weird sense, because, most people, finance, legal, or wealth managers or accountants, right? Most people who start those firms that we work with, they're a lawyer, an accountant, or manager. They're not a social media marketer. They're not a customer service representative. They're not a salesperson or a lead generator, right? And I tell people all the time because I feel like, oh, I'm going to just do it myself. Uh, Okay, absolutely, right? I was a one-man show when I stood up telehelping for the most part. Like I did everything by myself. Everything from find the client to find the people to doing everything along the way until they met each other and then manage them while I did it again, right? And wow, that's exhausting. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of the steps I did not do that well. And there's people on my team now that are far better at those jobs than me, right? Who, I have this podcast alone, Todd, you know how we message and communicate to over 400 people in the course of every week regarding being on the podcast, screening them for the podcast. It's a 3-person job, right? Do you think I have the time to do all that with those people, right? And then
Well, no,
also run a
no,
company. It's
and I think
tough.
and I think with what you're doing with your company, it's creating visibility. It's a chance for them to see you and listen to you, and then it's marketing. We all know what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
And frankly, the day job is boring. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not be cynical, but people want to hear who you are, how you think, how you process information. Like that's somebody that I could work with. That's somebody that I think could help my business. You had talked about trying to do everything yourself. Like if if you have a business that when you take off, you're not generating revenue, you don't have a business. You have a job, right? It's just
right.
it's your job that you own, but there's no value.
I
There's
love that.
nothing wrong with that. There isn't. If just understand that that's what it is. But how you create, if your vision is to create wealth and freedom and flexibility, right? If it sounds good, but that means you got to hire, you got to create scale, you got to outsource and or hire for what you're not good at, right? And it costs money. But if you say, yeah, I'm going to do it yourself, like, you know, you can't, like with your restaurant, you use that as a reference. There's almost so much certain amount of revenue that restaurant can do. If you want more revenue, you got to do another one. Then you got to do another one, right? You can scale businesses differently, but you have to look at it and say, if you say I'm doing everything myself, I think it's a lesson you probably every entrepreneur
Yeah.
needs to learn. But yeah,
Well, you said it well. I really like what you said there about if you step away from your business and it stops making money, you don't have a business, you have a job. And it aligns with something that I frequently say. And it's the three different phases of a business. There's starting the business, right? You need to start the business and the business needs to make money, right? So do you produce revenue? If you don't produce revenue, you don't have a business, right?
correct.
And the second bit is can your business run without you, right? And can you walk away from your business, like you just said, and if I don't show up tomorrow, this is very much going to still take place. Everything at telehelping is going to tick, right? And can that take place? Because if not, you just said it, you have a job, you don't have a business. And then the third one is, can your business grow without you? Working on that, right? Can my business get new clients without me? That's my dream. That's my 3-year plan, right? Being able to get my business to a point where there's someone else doing all my sales calls and everything
Well, when
eventually.
you bring that up with you, that you're talking about upskilling yourself.
Yeah.
Folks don't realize that CEOs and leaders of organizations, they they invest in continuing education and programs and enrichment to create that.
Yeah.
It's a big leap of faith for a business owner to hand off and delegate responsibility to somebody else, because that person's going to make mistakes and fail. And you got to let them do it. And it might in the short term cost you, but you're building and developing, an asset. I hate to say it, but that's what it is. But you're developing human capital, and that's how you replicate yourself and build your organization. And frankly, that individual usually, will like that, because people want responsibility. They want to grow within the role, and you got to let them do it. And it's hard to do that, particularly if you're talking about on the growth side of your business. That's where you're
Yeah.
really taking yourself to the next level.
And to your point, because I have 2 points from what you said there, is to your point, is that's what you're paying for when you get a franchise. You're paying for someone who's done all of these things for you already. And so you're coming into a business that they're going to tell you how to operate the kitchen and the restaurant perspective, right? How the advertisement, where to place the restaurant, right? And all these things are going to come into place, because I tell you, 10 out of 10 times, if I were to say what made my restaurant uberly successful, and I'll just give you an idea, I haven't stepped in my restaurant in a year and a half. It pays me every month. And so I haven't stepped inside of a year and a half, right? All that came down to where I placed it, learning the proper placement of a restaurant and how it, played a pivotal piece into its success. Now I realize our other locations had to be in very similar locations, and those locations did really well. And so, I think that's what you're paying for. The value you're paying for, like you said, is you're paying for all the, I'm going to use a really nice word here, tacit knowledge that someone has been able to develop through their painful journey of establishing a business and a brand. There's establishing a brand. You're buying into something that has success already. And I think that's the beautiful thing of a franchise. I love franchise. I haven't bought a franchise yet. Wouldn't mind. I've always used to want to own some Subways though. So thought about that.
It's interesting. You're talking a lot about food, and I'm glad you brought it up. Most of the stuff we do is actually not food.
What?
And
What do you mean?
no, not that it's bad. No,
No,
I think it
I
gets
didn't know.
I think it gets a negative rap, because people always think food is restaurant, right? And restaurant,
Yeah.
operating a full service restaurant with a bar, like, that's a very special franchise owner. But we have models. I mean, we have the fitness, we have the automotive, but we have schools, we have medical based franchises, we have ones that do IT, we have ones that do home improvement, home services. all different industries and sectors and skill sets. So business to business, business to consumer. And the other thing is some folks think, oh, if I'm going to get into a franchise, I got to put $1 million, million, 2 million. There are some franchises where your investment's under, $100,000. Doesn't mean you don't need working capital set aside, but it can be a lot more attainable than you realize. And that's really one of the reasons we're here, is to answer those initial questions, give you the basics, and then if you want to take it one step further, we can drill down specifically and find you opportunities. A lot of times during the day, I'm just answering basic questions, giving information to help people see, is this the right fit for you, and how to do it.
And my one last question, because you and I, we did a potty break before we started recording, so we did burn some time there. But my one question before we kind of gear down here is, do you help people find the right franchise for them? Because, I love the idea of a franchise, right? And I love adding to my portfolio. Um, but I wouldn't know what franchise to pick.
Well, so the answer to the question is yes. There's a process that we go through. And the key is, first understanding the purpose and the reason behind why you're doing it, right? That's more than math and return on investment and stuff, which is important. But first is, what's the purpose? What's your why? And we drill down on that a lot. And then the second component is identifying the criteria and giving you a perspective on kind of what's out there and helping you kind of explore. And then it's not like, oh, this is the right one for you, because you have to go on that journey and do your due diligence, which we help you with. Usually we'll show you a couple different ideas and allow you to experience it and see what's out there. Some people, you'll know kind of right away the industry, the type, where they're looking. Others might not, and might need to look at a broader cross section of things. But essentially, we're here to help guide you through that process. And I think one of the values is, like, if you go online and start Googling or chat GPTing now or whatever, it's great. There's a lot of information out there, but you'll get bombarded by a lot of these calls and solicitations. You just put your information out. So we kind of run interference on that, help you narrow down the scope. So when you're actually doing your search, you're targeting on stuff that's really in alignment.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that's a beautiful idea for many people who are watching this, is to understand is like, being a business owner doesn't mean you have to go through the gauntlet yourself on all things.
Right.
Starting business, people. However, you can pick up a how-to model, right? Which will cut down on a lot of what we talked about, which is a lot of the trial and error that goes into establishing a brand and an organization. So, Todd, it's been an absolute pleasure, learning a little about you, having our conversation on the adjacent topics. It's been an enjoyable experience, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. Hope to be back someday.
Yeah, actually, I wanted a whole special segment on franchising. So, like, I think that to be something that we should definitely schedule and have a whole episode on, like, you know, let's talk about franchises.
Yeah.
Like,
Excellent.
franchise owners are entrepreneurs, because I do a couple special segments as well. Just for those who don't know, I do current events where we just interviewed an Iranian, a Persian business owner. Last week before that, we interviewed a restaurant owner in downtown LA next to the riots. Right. We do some special segments that virtual assistants are people too. Right. We get the perspective of virtual assistants working for international businesses in the United States, but from Mexico. And so I love to do one on franchises, and, franchise owners are businesses too, right? There are entrepreneurs as well. And so I'd love to schedule that with you. So we'll definitely have that in the follow up. And I think that's something we could spend 30, 40 minutes on. And I think it'd be a great time.
Definitely. Always up for it, Cody.
So,
Thanks so much for having me.
thank you so much, sir.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.